everybody. Welcome to Ad America TV. My name is Aninda, one of the guests here in Ad America. It's really nice to see you all. We hope you're doing well and staying safe at home. For those of you just joined us for the first time, Ad America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and our mission is to provide a space for young donations to learn more about the United States. On this event, we'll be having Inclusion 101, the future of us. But before we begin, how about we have a little trivia? The question for today is, true or false, non-inclusive teams make better business decisions? Let me repeat once again. Is it true or false, non-inclusive teams make better business decisions? You can start typing your answer on our social media because in the end of the event, we'll do a live shout out for those of you who can guess the answer correctly. Other than that, don't forget to take a selfie and tag Ad America's Instagram account. Without further ado, please welcome our moderator for today, Abi Marutama, 2017 YCLE Professional Fellow. Mas Abi, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, inclusionists. Welcome to Inclusion 101, episode 11, The Future of Us. I'm Abi Marutama. I will be your today's moderator. COVID-19 has induced an unprecedented situation for all of us, young people around the world. For 2 years, we have been living under pandemic restriction, which continuously affect the ways we interact, communicate, work, and live. Many children and adolescents have to study online, whereas several of them have no access to the internet or online learning materials are not accessible for those who have disability. In the long run, if online education continues, students will lack social skills. They tend to be individualistic, have no personal bond with their peers, and may find themselves difficult when they have to interact with their peers in person. The pandemic has also forced young people to quit their jobs because their companies do not anticipate the unprecedented situation. As a result, many of them have no livelihood and potentially live in poverty. Lastly, young people find themselves difficult to criticize government's policies or simply express their concerns because mass gatherings are forbidden by governments. Although technology provides virtual spaces for them to speak, some people believe it is not effective to make their voices heard. So, despite the emergence of cutting edge technology, not all young people can harness it and benefit from it. On uh, our today's questions are what our future looks like if the pandemic is not over very soon sometime, and then what we can do to overcome the future challenges. In order to answer those questions, we have three distinguished young leaders who will uh, share their thoughts and insights with us today. Uh, our first speaker is Padabe, Padabayeva Nastasia. She is 2017 U.S. Department of State's Professional Fellow from Belarus. Hello, Natasha. How are you?
Hello, everybody. Well, thank you for asking me to participate in the conference. I'm with you, and I'm glad to answer your questions and give you some brief information on what's going on in Belarus.
Okay, thank you so much. And our second speaker is Fani Saiful Alam. He is 2020 International Visitor Leadership Program Fellow. Hello, Fani. How are you?
Hello. Fine, thank you. I mean, I'm really sorry about the technical issues that I've encountered, and thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. And then I hope that actually we can share all of this thought positively here. Thank you, Abby.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you. And our last speaker is Andira Pramatiasari. She is a legal analyst from Jakarta Provincial Government. Hello, Andrea. How are you?
Hello, Abby, and hello, everyone. I'm fine. Thank you for inviting me here. It's an honor for me.
Yeah, thank you. Before we begin, I would like to thank to the U.S. Embassy for supporting this program, and also to our Indonesian sign language interpreters. We have Mada and Sidik. Thank you for both of them to make this event as accessible as possible for people with disability. And then I would like to invite our audiences to share their comments or their thoughts while we are discussing here. So if you are watching from Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter or other social media platforms, uh, you can share your comments there, or you can ask your questions there, and then I will pass the questions to our speakers. Okay, so within the past 2 years, can you tell us what difficulties young people have the most, and how do they manage to overcome them? So, Nastasia, what do you think? What are the most difficulties that young people, particularly in Belarus, face right now?
Well, thank you for asking me. I just want to give you some facts about Belarus. Belarus is a European country that didn't have any lockdowns yet, and our dictator just cancelled compulsory wearing of masks in public places, and we live in some kind of parallel universe if you compare to other countries. Because in the very beginning of pandemic, our dictator said that our economy couldn't afford any lockdowns and any business support measures. In the beginning of 2020, when the pandemic started in Belarus, students and teachers launched some petitions to government Ministry of Education to start online education to prevent COVID spreading. And in most universities, these measures, some measures were taken to start online education, and they organized online lectures. They made some changes in educational process to prevent to organize social distance and so on. But that was happened before the presidential elections in August 2020. Right now, we don't have online education in all universities, and we have 50 universities in our country with 260,000 students in them, and everything is going in the same way as it happened before the pandemic. We have offline education in all universities in the country, and everything is going some kind in ordinary. We live a kind of ordinary life with our government living on separate planets, and we live on the other planet, I can say.
Okay, thank you. And the same question to Fanny. What do you think?
Okay. Well, thank you for this opportunity to understand. Then we should know that actually maybe in general, as you said previously, that young people face various situations within the past 2 years of the COVID pandemic, right? And then what I can see is that in general, they've got the issue in education, and the second one is the issues of accessing a work opportunity. And then the condition, I guess, is more intense after the ongoing pandemics. And we know that actually maybe the government has already come up with some of the solution, mostly in economic, yeah, because I believe that it is very applicable to support a lot of society, particularly the youth. Well, however, some of other issues regarding this also occur. For example, like whether the youth are supported with proper gadgets and technology to access, for example, education, right? Because I believe that most of the education institutions have integrated all online systems for their education, and then unfortunately, maybe youth also face the turmoil for the work opportunities. So there are a lot of unemployment for sure. Yeah. In this case, we rely on the mastery of uh, online technology, yeah, uh, to access education and also work, and some kind of swift in the workforce. For example, like most of the youth now become the entrepreneurs, maybe in the small scale, yeah, to survive. Yeah. We can see that the online shop or maybe selling is increasing today, yeah. And some of the actors of this are a youth without jobs, yeah. And I believe that this situation can also help them. Anyway, um, the other significant thing, I guess, is the importance of digital media literacy, because it is very important to anticipate exposure of hoaxes and misinformation about social issues and other for the youth. That's all, maybe.
Right. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, and the same question is to Andira, but probably you may add your perspective because um, I know that you are a woman with visual disability. You are legally blind, and probably you can provide insights about what difficulties that young people with disability face in the event of the pandemic here.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Actually, I have two answers. For the first one is in general for every young people and also especially for young people with disability. Uh, Within this past 2 years, we faced the COVID-19 pandemics, and as we know, most of young people are very active and willing to try a new thing for their life. For example, um, they often traveling abroad to continue their study, to work, or just for vacation. In early 2020, due to COVID-19, all countries make a policy to restrict the movement activity, like the name of lockdown or something like that. And this radical change uh, was a difficulty for young people because they should stay at home for a long time. But uh, as an adaptive generation, they found the solution quickly. Like they change the difficulties into an opportunity. For example, they try to being productive at home, like became a content creator and also produce healthcare tools like that. But this situation also have an impact for young people with disability. For example, for the job like master that need physical touch, it really decrease their income. And the other example is for the musician. They cannot perform due to the restriction of activity policy. But as well as the young people in general, they also try to struggling by looking for another job that can be done without need to go outside. I think that's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Andira. Well, yeah, it's all about everything getting online. So education has to go online. Our world has to go online. So I just actually read about online education from this book. So this is actually a grammar book, but one of the articles here in this book, I think this is written. This was written in 2015. Uh, and it was published by Cambridge University. And the book has an article that talk about the future of online learning. So at so I think at the time when the writer wrote the book, the writer didn't really think that such online learning will happen tremendously. Now we are doing that to some extent, and it even almost all aspects of learning are conducted virtually, which is something unprecedented. So in the past, some people may have already experienced online learning, but some others did not experience that kind of thing. But because of the pandemic, it forces us to do everything virtually, including learn through online materials. So I'm quite curious about what Andira said, because the government imposes uh, restriction policies because mass gatherings are not allowed to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. But in the on the other hand, this may be seen as a less democratic country, because um, governments around the world can make excuse about you cannot express yourself on the streets because of the pandemic. So you have to criticize governments through online channels. So I want to go to Fanny. As a youth activist, you have witnesses that the government of Indonesia imposes a number of different pandemic policies, which some of them may make young Indonesians young Indonesians lives more difficult. For instance, the requirement of getting jabs before someone can return to work, while young people do not want to get jabs because they have a severe illness or they just do not believe in particular types of vaccine. Do you think that the government has become less democratic in this case?
Okay. In this issue, we need to realize that when government has become less democratic, it means they also try to reduce the dissemination of information correctly. Now, for example, when we talk about vaccination, I personally figure out that the government and their health authorities do not provide sufficient information about vaccination, yeah, about their types and their future impacts maybe for the vaccine recipients. Well, and in this term, yeah, most youth or maybe young people in Indonesia finally search for the information by themselves through various sources. And it's very concerning. It's very worrying because somehow they find most of the information maybe through untrusted sources. and reshare all the information to multiple recipients. And it means there is like lack of relevant information about vaccination, the types, the impact, uh, which might create various speculation and reluctance among youth and also in general for others. And finally, it results many negativities about vaccination itself. While finally, it can also lead to the issues of transparency, which becomes people's right in terms of information openness for sure. Yeah, that's my response.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So I think in the
Mhm.
future,
Mhm.
in the future,
Mhm.
vaccines will be like a ticket to go anywhere. If you want to return to work, if you want to
Yep.
go to school, or if
Yep.
you want to just um visit public spaces, then you need to show your vaccination certificate, something like that.
Mm.
So it is. So it will be our future. this is this is something that I never imagined.
Yeah.
Um, thank you, Fanny, for your
There are
insight.
always two sides of that, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There are always two sides. I mean, of these issues because
Mhm.
uh, in the first side, maybe we can be, for examples, like we can know how protected we are, yeah, and then
Mhm.
it is also part of the positive things maybe from the government. But however, we are also feel controlled, okay, because of that.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you, Fanny. And then I want to ask a question to Nastasia. So as COVID-19 globally spreads and affects us all, I assume that everyone in Belarus, like other young people in other parts of the world, do not anticipate this. Like it or not, we have to live with it now. And can you tell me how do Belarus young people respond to the pandemic, and what kind of any policies imposed by your government? And specifically, does your government consult young people there about the pandemic response when they want to make policies?
Well, I can say that right now most of websites that organize petitions to state bodies, these websites are banned in Belarus because we have dictatorship in Belarus. So the dictatorship doesn't need any feedback from the population. So this channel of communication is very limited, as you can see.
Mm-hmm.
As for our job possibilities, right now we expect a kind of 2% of GDP growth this year, but this growth is due to machinery and oil processing sector, uh, and it means that small and medium-sized businesses are squeezing, and these small and medium-sized business were the main job providers for young people. I mean, catering sector, hotels, cafes, restaurants. These businesses are closing and squeezing their staff to minimum, and it means that young people will have less possibilities for job opportunities in future. And what is important is that Russia is also closed its border, so the job migration is now limited, and we have about 30% of hidden unemployment. It means that about 30% of the population, workable population, um, uh, were moving to Russia to find jobs there. And right now, these opportunities is limited. So um, the future the future for young people is really really uncertain right now, and I think they will have to focus on their mental health
Mental health.
to face this kind of harsh life in the future. They have to understand that they have to rely on their own and try to develop the skills that could help them to survive, like entrepreneurial skills, because the global economy has a tendency for squeezing. That's the that's a sad truth, but it's truth. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm quite concerned about the government doesn't consult uh, to young people about what kind of policies needed when they have to respond to the pandemic, because um, it's about our lives. Um, we cannot entirely, I mean, sorry, we cannot entirely leave everything to the government, because because government policies may not cover everything we need. But if that is what's happening in your country, I'm quite really concerned, and I hope everything will be getting better soon. So thank you for your insight. And I would like to go to Andira. I know that you are a provincial government officer for Jakarta government. So, and you have disability. I already mentioned it. And do you think that our government, particularly Jakarta government, has engaged young people in decision making process, particularly uh, in finding solution to overcome the pandemic?
Okay, unfortunately, perhaps I cannot answer this question precisely, but let me try to answer this question by giving an example through my office. Uh, Currently, I'm working in the Legal Bureau of Jakarta Provincial Government. Uh, and right now, in the drafting process of regional regulation on disability, I'm asked to involve and also give some suggestions. Uh, but for the pandemic itself, I until now I haven't heard any information about the involvement of young civil servant with disability yet. I think I don't know. I don't know if maybe the Jakarta provincial government already involved them, but for me, and when I try to ask my friends, they also never told me that uh, the Jakarta provincial government has involved them into the policy making process about pandemic situation.
Okay, I think it it is not necessarily about the pandemic. Yes, but I I really appreciate the Jakarta provincial government. I mean, they do involve young people like you. They do really consult young people, both from, I think, from the internal organization. I mean, they consult you as the civil servant of the Jakarta provincial government. And I know that I heard that Jakarta provincial government also consults um, other policies with um, different different organizations of young people in Jakarta, but I don't know the detail yet. But I assume that um, if we look at the democracy index for Jakarta, I think the level is quite good compared to other cities in Indonesia, and we really appreciate what you are doing, and we hope that you can do better in the future. And so I would like to go to Nastasia again. Um, you know that our future can be scarier than we can imagine. Um, in a conference, Bill Gates said that we may face another pandemic, biological warfare, and climate change in the future. So I think to overcome those challenges, the division and the rivalry between the East and West, between the United States and um, other superpowers like China and Russia should be ended, because we cannot solve those problems if we continuously uh, fight against each other. So, what do you think young people in general can do to prepare for a different number of scenarios in the future? So we may have a good future. Let's say that the pandemic will be over soon, sometime, but it is also possible that in the near future um, we will also be faced with another different pandemic, or there will be a biological warfare, just like what Bill Gates predicted. So what do you think?
Well, everybody see that we have confrontation of big countries right now, confrontation of USA, Russia, China, but in the same way, we need to be more consolidated in developing the pandemic strategy. And that's a real scary thing, that when we need to be more united, we are drifting in absolutely uh, different directions. And there is a real threat of situation in other countries, like it is in Belarus, when the isolation will give growth to dictatorship, when isolation will give growth to propaganda, when isolation will when people want to feel safety, then they can rely on any kind of dictatorship, and they could believe any anything what he said, using the channels of propaganda. That's a real threat for democracy in such a situation, because the lack of information, the lack of communication could give the way to manipulating both young people and adults. It doesn't mean it, and everything is happening at the time we need to be more consolidating. And young people have to prepare to live in the world of uncertainty, and they have to prepare that someone could manipulate them to get the power to make their own decisions despite feedbacks and opinions from the population. That's the real threat for any country all over the world in the time of pandemic, the birth of dictators, the birth of xenophobia, and it's a free way to fascism, really, believe me.
Just an additional question to clarify. Do you think that young people, uh, especially in Belarus, have power to make a change? I mean, to change from the dictatorship to be a more democratic country?
Well, we could see that those who dared to protest, they were sent to prison and uh, got a real prison terms up to 5 years. Some of the students managed to leave the country and got a hostage in Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and they were provided with some grants to carry on their education in European countries, thanks to European Union. But for the rest of the young people, the easiest way is to keep silent and to pretend nothing is happening. And that was going on. And well, it's sorry, it's my personal issue. It's really difficult to tell about it, but still, we have the power to carry on our fight with dictatorship, uh, and of course, it's up to young people to choose the way they will act in the future. What they need is they're confident in what they are doing, and what they need is to understand that there is no other way apart of democracy to live in a decent and honest way.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to go to Andira now. Andira, young people with disability are quite familiar with different kinds of assistive technology, and I think those what make them cope with this hard situation. However, the use of technology may make us be too reliant on it as if it is indispensable. Additionally, it may also make us difficult to interact with the others in a person's setting. How do we balance the use of technology and real life interaction, as there may be a possibility we can gather together again if scientists find a solution to combat the pandemic for good?
Yeah, I think to balance the use of technology and our real life, we need to realize that we are a human, not a robot. Um, so we have to remember that technology is only a tools that we use to help our activity, uh, and our real life is the real place to empower and also to actualize ourselves. I think um, if we already realize that, we can balance the use of technology and also our real life.
Okay, Andrea, thank you. Before I go to Fanny, I would like to invite our audiences again to share their comments and ask their questions to at America social media. You can write some comments on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or and other social media platforms. And we will answer your questions. If you have any or if you have comments, please do write down your comments. So I want to go to Fanny now. So my question to Fanny, as it is quite hard to project when the pandemic will be over, and on the other hand, we have to keep moving forward. What do you think we can do to make sure pandemic policies can cover a wide range of different people's needs in the long run? For a simple instance, elevators buttons are covered with antibacterial films to prevent the spread of COVID-19, but these films make people with visual impairment hard to grab and identify the buttons covered with the films. In South Korea, a company invents an antibacterial films with braille to help those who are legally blind to touch the button. So, what do you think, Fanny?
Okay. What you have explained about the initiative of the company in South Korea actually has not been seen in our country. That's what I see personally. But however, we need to see that wealth issue for marginalized group becomes obviously significant because it is their hardship to access economic and work opportunities. So I believe that it becomes one of the most priority, I guess, in our country. So, well, the mentioned groups are for low-income society, including low-income women and disability. Well, I believe that COVID-19 excludes them from their fulfillment right of economic and work access because of government restriction policy that does not allow them to work outside and interact socially. So to anticipate this issue, I believe that the government in here has released some of economic stimulus aids. And like I said, I haven't found what you have explained in South Korea in here. That's my response. Yeah.
Okay, Fanny, thank you so much. So I have additional questions for all of you. So I want to go to Andira now. So Andira, according to World Economic Forum, the emergence of advanced technology can be a catalyst to help young people with disability to learn and to work remotely. But on the other hand, this technology is kind of cutting edge and quite expensive. While at the same time, people with disability live in poverty. Most of people with disability live in poverty, so they cannot afford to buy this technology, let alone use them. So what do you think we should do to bridge the gap between the advancement of technology, but the accessibility of technology, I mean, the affordability of this technology is quite difficult to be reached by certain groups of young people, especially those who have disability and live in poverty?
Maybe we have to try to create the technology locally, or to try to use an open source technology if it is available, and we can try to ask for our government to provide the accessibility or the technology for the people with disability who live in poverty or under poverty. And maybe we can like do a partnership with other country or with the company who produce the technology or who produce some tools that really needed by the disabled people in Indonesia, so they can like give a discount or maybe give give some tools for free for us because uh, we are here is yeah still trying to create our own technology. Maybe that the solution that can be done for now.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. Um, I want to elaborate more with you, Andrea. You have participated in what is it, Global IT Challenge for youth with disability organized by Disabled People International Korea. So, do you find that this event can promote the affordability and the accessibility to assistive technology for young people with disabilities so that they can use them to help them navigate their future?
Yeah, I think that event is like a good place to promote the accessibility, especially like for me who comes from Indonesia, uh, that we know that in Indonesia the access as technology assistive technology is still very expensive for most of us. So when I go to Korea, I can try to use many tools that I haven't found yet in Indonesia, and then I know that if I use that kind of tools, I can do many things. I can do maybe like uh, I can do without I can do something without helping by sighted people like that. So I know that the use of technology is very useful for disabled people. And then I found in Korea maybe in 2012 like an electric wheelchair, and in 2012 I haven't found the wheelchair electric wheelchair in Indonesia, but for now I found it in Indonesia also. But in 2012 I when I tried to touch the electric wheelchair, and then I said that, oh wow, I think this kind of tools is very useful for people with physical disability like that.
Okay, thank you so much. So I want to go to Nastasia again. So Nastasia, you have been to the US for some time, and you know that the the United States has a pop culture that can predict the technology. For example, there will be alien invasion, or there will be artificial intelligence that can help us to make our life easier. Um, do you think that kind of culture can be brought and can be accepted by young people in Belarus?
Well, a part of pop culture, the United States is a country with high-tech economy, and the country that made a lot of researches in the field of pharmacy, in the field of high-tech machinery that provides more mobility and more possibilities for people. And what I was focused on, traveling the USA and studying the uh, industrial sector, studying the IT sector in United States. And as for pop culture, I think that uh, young people could clear could make clear um, could differ the field of entertainment and the field of real life. So if they are quite successful mixing pop culture with IT sector researchers, and they're quite successful in mixing mm, mixing fashion with real work dedication, and what I can see in young generation. They are very open, but at the same time they are very focused on their future career, and I don't think there is any threat for them to mix pop culture with their real life, and to separate the entertainment and reality of life. And it's also important that every country have their unique culture and their unique roots, and I think that there is no threat for them. You can see how unique Great Britain, still unique Great Britain, but it's very open. It has very open economy. It has very open for any new technology and so on. So I think the young generation is very open for any kind of high tech and modern things, but they can make difference between real life and I don't think it can really affect them in their life.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make a a quick comment. Every impossible possibility begins from math science. So what I refer to math science is a science that describes something extraordinary. For example, like like if you ever watch Terminator series, it's a movie about robots from the future will invade a human because the robots, because have smart they have smarter brains than we do. Um, um, I think late Professor Stephen Hawking, a physicist, he already warned us that the possibility of the artificial intelligence um, can eliminate the human race if this kind of thing is too smart. They can destroy us, and I think it begins now. There is a debate in if you follow a program on BBC, program called "People Fixing the World." There is a debate about the employment of AI and the employment of um, real human. Because of the AI, humans can lose their jobs because uh, AI can do what humans can do even faster and better. So this will be a challenge for us, and the the pandemic has disrupted this idea. I mean, not the disrupted, has has accelerated this idea, because when people cannot go to work because of the travel restriction, AI can replace humans to do any jobs that human cannot do because of the physical distancing policy. So I want to bring this to Fanny. So Fanny, as a young activist, um, this AI could be a threat for young people, could be a threat for minority groups, including people with disabilities and women, or people, young people from rural areas. So, what we should prepare? What do you think we should prepare to um, make sure to make sure that AI will not take the jobs that we need in the future?
What a question, Abi. On this weekend, I need to answer this kind of question for sure. Well, actually, maybe in general, I should also think that AI is a part of the technology, right?
Mhm.
And under this pandemic situation, we can see that digitalization in technology is something inevitable, you know. However, what we need to do is, for the first, we need to make a balance between like online or maybe offline activities, because not all of people are well prepared with the emergence of AI or maybe technology to support their activities, because we also need to see the context. Okay? We need to see the context in which uh, AI or maybe technology will be applied. So, in terms of preparation, I really believe that the key is actually still relies on the government in here. We need to see whether the government could implement uh, basic education, maybe, or maybe well integrated system of education to schools or maybe institutions, yeah, to introduce the technology which can also be applied by everyone with no exception. And however, like I said, we still need to see the context, because, for example, in rural areas, not all of people there could be applying the AI or maybe the technology, because they are still using the conventional measures for their work. And we also need to see that AI or maybe technology will not be replacing all of part of their jobs, because what we need to see is the balancing or maybe the combination between the human work and the using of AI or technology in daily.
Okay, thank you, Fanny. So I think another issue that that we need to discuss is about the climate change, because the climate change is really happening. Whether some people don't believe, it doesn't matter to me. So I would like to go to Andira. Maybe this is not your expertise, but I just want to hear your insights. So I believe that the climate change can affect people with disability so much. Probably people with disability can have more morbidities. I mean, like a double disabilities, because the climate change can increase a certain impairment to become worse. So, do you think that people with disabilities should be aware of the climate change issues as well?
Yeah, of course. I think people with disability as well as other people should be aware about climate change because yeah, as you said before, climate change can also give more difficulties for people with disability. And I can give an example if the impact of climate change is like a flooding or uh, yeah, something like that, natural disaster. And then if it is happen, it will be more difficult for people with disability to evacuate themselves and also to help other people to be evacuated. So I think people with disability is have to be aware about climate change issue, and then have to learn how to prevent the climate change by themselves.
Okay, thank you. Funny, as an activist, you also advocate for climate change as well. So how can you make sure that climate change policies can cover the needs of different young people, including those who have disability and women as well as children?
Yeah. Uh, Again, Abby, it's tough question on the weekends, you know. Yeah. Okay. But we need to see that, like you said, a lot of people also do not care or maybe believe uh, about the climate change issues. However, what we see currently, for example, is like a flood or maybe landslides everywhere, and also a change of temperatures also make us worry. So in here, I always try to impose that the government is always the key. The government is always the key to release relevant information or maybe regulation uh, according to the climate change issues. Uh, what what we need, what our community, for example, has done in my community, for example, is like uh, we usually share a lot of issues about climate change, what happens, and then what our youth have encountered in their own area regarding climate change issues. For example, it's like how they try to mitigate from flood or maybe landslides because most of our youth are located in those risky areas, yeah, for flood and then landslides, you know, yeah. And then their example shows that there has already been a very good cooperation between their local authorities with the society to create their own mitigation system. However, when I question them, such as whether the regional government or maybe local government in the larger scale try to assist them with some kind of assistance or maybe help, and they said uh, they were quite late to come. So mostly a lot of assistance were conducted by themselves and with the help of local authorities. So in here, I can see that maybe the regulation from the large scale government maybe uh, has not come or maybe has not been received by them. So they work independently due to these issues.
Okay, we have a question. I don't know from who, but the question is, I think for Andira. Do you think that people with disabilities should be aware with the pandemic situation?
Yeah, I think people with disability also need to be aware about this pandemic situation. For example, for blind people who needs more physical touch rather than another type of disability, uh, they have to be aware about how to how to prevent themselves from from the virus, like wash their hands, and then also uh, keep keep the area clean, like that. If they don't know how to prevent themselves by the virus, I think maybe it will be so harmful for them.
Okay, thank you so much. So thank you for the questions. So I would like uh, once again to invite all of you who are watching us from at America's social media platforms, from anywhere you are. You can share your comments or ask your questions, and I will pass the questions to our speakers today. We still have time to do that, and I just want to move to Nastasia. So we still are discussing the impact of the climate change. Um, so how often do young people in Belarus discuss uh, the climate change, and how how aware they are about this issue?
Uh, well, as I said before, that we right now we don't have the website with petitions that uh, which were banned after presidential elections. So the feedback channels are now ruined. And what I can say also that we have recently built a nuclear power station, and we didn't have any public hearing regarding this nuclear power station, despite the Chernobyl catastrophe that happened in 1980s and that affected about 30% of our territory. Our territory, 30% of Belarus were contaminated with nuclear trash, and this territory is now um, taken out of economic turnout. And despite this fact, we didn't have any public hearing regarding the building of this power station. Our government uh, taking their own decisions, as I said, because they are living kind of a separate planet from the uh, other population. And this nuclear power station was built with the use of Russian loan, government loan, and the Russia is a country where the nuclear trash after usage is um, uh, it has to be buried. And I think that the long-term strategy of Russia to build uh, these power stations around in the nearby countries to gain money in such kind of way, and that's their main interest. What I can say that nuclear energy is of course a kind of catalyst for economy, could be kind of catalyst for economy, especially when economy is very energy efficient, energy consumptive, but in the same way, they have to realize that it was a real threat for climate as well, because nuclear trash had to be buried and with very and have to be handled with many precautions, and this fact could be also taken into account uh, uh, when taking decisions about building these nuclear stations and using nuclear energy in future, because you can see also the situation that happened in Japan and the catastrophe at nuclear power station. Uh, Even such a high-tech country have this kind of problem right now, and they're great that they could combat this problem and save people's life. And not all the countries have such a possibility and such technologies if any emergency situation could happen.
Okay, uh, I I still want to discuss with Nastasia, because we have um, we have a question from Instagram. Um, I don't know the situation of people with disability in Belarus, but probably you can tell a little bit based on your knowledge. What kind of government action that has been done recently to help people with disability in Belarus to overcome the challenges in this pandemic situation?
Well, there is a real issue with with providing help for disabled people right now, because recently our government banned a lot of NGOs who provided this help, who who bring in to Belarus a lot of useful utilities and useful wheelchair. I can say just I can mention like a modern wheelchairs and so on and so on, with the help of foreign grants and foreign programs from, for example, UNDP. They're using UNDP grants. They're using USA grants to help these disabled people. But after presidential elections, these NGOs were called called foreign spies, and yes, and the government just banned them, and they 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 can act right now. And what apart of propaganda and other things, they these acts really affect these disabled people, because what our government do is ensuring pension. The pension is about $150 per month. It's just small money to live, and especially for young people to live a proper life. But even such possibilities right now is impossible. I mean, the help from these NGOs regarding the different uh, different sources of information, different channels of communication for disabled people.
Well, that's quite concerning. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I think disability is an issue that should not be controversial and should be universal because most of governments around the world they recognize disability as human rights. So people with disability are entitled to the same rights as other people without disability. But when you say that some NGOs are accused of being spy because they receive grants from USAID and from UNDP. So it is quite concerning for me, and it is very challenging there for people with disability to advocate for themselves because of the political situation in Belarus. Okay, thank you for your insight. And I want to move to Andira. You are part of the government, so can you tell me what kind of policies that Jakarta local government has imposed to help people with disability to overcome challenges during this pandemic, Andira?
Um, yeah, as I know, Jakarta provincial government as well as the Ministry of Social give people with disability who lives in Jakarta uh, like money, fresh money every month for people with disability. It's around 300,000 per month during this pandemic situation. And Jakarta provincial government also give like uh, some kind of food and some kind of basic needs for people with disability during this pandemic situation.
Okay, thank you so much. So sorry. So we almost at the end of our today's program. So this is kind of special for me because we just celebrated um, the International Day of People with Disability yesterday, and there were many events, both international and at national levels. Um, so this is this is not happening in this didn't happen in last or in previous episodes of Inclusion 101, but probably any of you have a question for me. So if you have a question, you can ask now. If you don't, I will ask more questions to you before we end our today's program. Do any of you have a question for me? I can answer for you.
Abi, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
So, uh, so, how can you pursue the local or maybe regional government to release a super friendly regulations for disability? Because I can still see that a lot of public spaces are still not equipped with the disabled friendly facilities, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So how can you encourage the local governments or maybe regional governments to release the relevant regulations regarding this?
Mhm. So, well, actually, the local governments across the country, I mean, across Indonesia, they don't have to release any kind of regulations to make sure that public spaces are accessible for people with disability because the Ministry of Housing and Public Works already imposed a special regulation on accessibility in public spaces and public buildings. So they are so buildings and public spaces are required to meet some certain requirements, which enable easy access for people with disability to navigate there. But the problem is not in the regulation, I think. The problem is in the political will and the willingness of the government to engage um, uh, disability community to build those public spaces. So for instance, um, many public spaces in government buildings or private entities have been built accessibly, but because when they built that, they didn't consult them with people with disability. So the accessibility is not really accessible. The public places there, the facilities that they have built are not accessible because um, when they were built, um, people with disability were not involved. They didn't ask questions to people with disability whether these facilities that they were building uh, really can be used by them. So that is the problem.
So sometimes any types of development are not consulted to relevant people who really require that, right?
Right. And that is why it may influence our future. So if we don't,
I believe so.
yeah, if we don't make public spaces as accessible as possible until 2030, we cannot reach what we call it, like um this like Indonesia disability in oh sorry, disability inclusive Indonesia in 2030, because we project that in 2030 we are projecting that in 2030 that Indonesia will be much more accessible and more friendly than now for people with different abilities. So we almost at the end of the program, so we have 5 minutes. So I want you to give like a closing statement, probably not really a closing statement, about what is your hope for the future. So we will start um, from Nastasia. So what is your hope for a better future? Now we are at the end of 2021. So what is your hope for a better future?
Well, if you mean Belarus specifically, my hope is for consolidating our society, and my hope is our neighboring countries that could still demonstrating and showing their help for democratic Belarus. I mean, specifically Belarus. As for the world, I my hope is for honest dialogue for all the countries in the world regarding vaccine, regarding climate changes, regarding pandemic and war threats. And this honest dialogue is the only way that could help the world in such in such hard times, because otherwise we could see the escalating of escalating of xenophobic and escalating of uh, uh, escalating of situations that just the situations that could happen in other countries apart from Afghanistan and other eastern countries, that uh, some kind of militaristic groups could seize the power, and using propaganda and using manipulations of people could deceive them, and using them in their own way.
Okay, thank you. We pray for that. Um, Next, Fanny, what is your hope for a better future, Fanny?
Well, actually, the inclusion, uh, as our title of event, actually is a real significant key to maintain our country in the future. And then I really believe that uh, our government could be very inclusive in integrating all of the part of the society, including the youth, as a part of the developing agents. And the integration of the government and all of the part of the society to encourage the inclusion is a very real key for a better future in our country.
Okay, right. Thank you so much. And the last one is Andira. What is your hope?
My hope for people with disability, including young people with disability, is uh, our country, Indonesia, will be more accessible, not only in a big city like Jakarta and other big city, but also in the rural area. It is also need to be more accessible because people with disability is not only live in the big city but also um, in other rural area and other province, other city. And then the accessibility that I mean is not only physical accessibility, but also like awareness from every people, and also opportunity from every people to make people with disability can interact with all of us, can work together, can have uh, a good education, and can do main activity together with non-disabled people.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you. That's all, guys, for our today's event. Thank you, Nastasia, for your time and for your thoughts. Thank you, Fanny, for your time and for your insights. Thank you, Andira, for your time and for your ideas. Okay, I am Abi Marutama. I would like to thank to our interpreters, Mada and Sidik. Thank you for making our event accessible for people with disability. And I would like to thank the U.S. Embassy here in Jakarta and at America team for supporting our event. Keep watching at America because you will find more interesting events from education to cultural programs and even sports and other youth activities here in at America. I will see you again on next episode in Inclusion 101 in to 2022. So see you guys in 2022. Keep safe and goodbye. I'm Abi Marutama signing out. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you very
our
much.
speakers and moderator, for tonight's insightful session. Early in this event, we asked our audience, the question was, true or false, non-inclusive teams make better business decisions? And the answer is false. Inclusive teams actually make better business decisions up to 87% of the time. In addition, teams that follow an inclusive process make the decision-making process faster. Shout out to @MayaTrainer from Instagram for answering correctly. Thank you to everyone who has participated to our question of the day. Don't forget to tune in next time and catch a chance to get a live shoutout from us. Now, you may be wondering, how can I develop an awesome idea with a place like this? Very easy. You can go to our website at www.atamerica.org.id, select create a program, and go to collaborate with us. All the event proposals will be reviewed and your event might be featured here soon. While you are on our website, you can subscribe to our newsletter to get our weekly event updates. Well, that wraps this episode. It's been fun. Unfortunately, we have to say goodbye. You can follow us. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at ATAmerica. You can get fun content and so much more. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, thanks for joining us. My name is Aninda, and see you next time. Bye-bye.